Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and in this video I want to cover Assassin's Creed Shadows in a spoiler-free manner, and also just give you as many kind of beginner tips, whether you click too quickly or forgot a tip, or just some reminders, and some things I've noticed as I've been playing through my first kind of 25-30 hours or so. Haven't rolled credits, but I think I've done enough to get the general idea of what you're going to be seeing, and hopefully this will smooth out your journey and kind of keep things as enjoyable as possible, because I do think there's a good game here. For those of you who are looking for the Assassin's Creed and feudal Japan and, you know, your samurai and shinobi assassin combat, all that stuff's in there. That being said, there's just a couple things that might make your time a little bit more fun, and that's why I'm here. So if you learned anything from this video, drop a comment below, say hello. If there's any major stuff I miss and you see this later on, feel free to add it in, and let's jump in. And the first thing really comes to when you're making a new game. Now, when it comes to your new game setup, you got four options, so I kind of want to go through them real quick. Expert difficulty, the biggest thing to know about Expert, outside of the enemies being a bit stronger, is the stealth. Stealth on normal, you can use verticality, like rooftops and things like that, to kind of break stealth. When you're on Expert, if you're just standing at the end of a rooftop and some enemy can most likely totally see you standing there, they're going to. So if you're looking for a bit more of an intense stealth experience, something where you really kind of gotta go for a challenge to be really sneaky in the way you work, Expert, and you can actually change even just the stealth difficulty at Expert if you want that, but you want combat to be normal, you can mess with that in the settings too. But Expert stealth is actually something, if you're going for that stealth challenge, that's the way to do it. Guided exploration. What this is going to do, and I'll kind of show you examples when I get to the map, is when you're playing through Assassin's Creed, you're going to have things that are a scouting resource. You'll find different people in the world. You'll have different upgrades in places. The more scouts you have, the more you can use. And when you're going for quests, your early tips might be, hey, they're in like West Kyoto. And you're like, all right, that's a pretty big area. And then maybe they're at, you know, the West Shrine, or maybe it'll even be broad at first. It's like it's in this region. It's in Western Kyoto. And then they might be in this shrine. And you'll still have to look around the shrine, try and find them. If you turn guided exploration on, one, just to know certain achievements won't work, but also you can change this off and on if you want to. But what this will also do, it will basically just give you a quest marker right on the map, and you can go straight to them. So it's really up to you if you want to, you know, if you want to enjoy the, you know, stealthing around castles and the combat and just doing your assassin thing. But if you're going for certain quest directions, you don't want to have to worry about hunting them, you can do that. If you want to use the scouting system and want to use the clues that are there and do a little bit more of natural exploration, that's going to be your difference. Total preference in how you want to play, completely up to you. Canon mode. Do you want to have choices when it comes to dialogue and things? Leave this off. If you just want to have every cutscene just play straight through and have no choices in the game and really not worry about it, you can turn canon mode on. Me, preference-wise, so far, canon mode's actually been good because some of the cinematics actually are pretty in-depth and long, and it's nice just to set down the controller, sit back, take in the little mini-movie and go, and not have to worry about picking up the controller, answer a question one way or the other. Now, you may not have the same outcome of certain allies or certain things going your way or not in smaller situations, but overall, I don't think this is going to break the game because this is the way they want you to actually experience the story for the franchise, so it's up to you and what you do there. Immersive mode is going to get rid of your English dialogue and go purely Japanese or blended with Portuguese, depending on what's there. And that's the only thing you're going to hear. So if you appreciate the Japanese dialogue options more, or if you want the English, you can turn it off. But again, if you want to just listen to the Japanese voice dialogue, you're okay with the subtitles. This is kind of your natural experience to go through. And those are like your main new game setup settings. There are a couple other settings I'll show you once we actually get in game, but those are just when you're starting, a couple things to know. There are a couple other settings you might want to look into. Whether it's voice language and the immersive mode, you can switch that on here. Captions, you can mess with stuff. Narration, you can actually have screen narration on if you want to. But again, if you want to change your voice dialogue, stuff like that's still accessible in here. When it comes to gameplay, your difficulty tuning, as I said, you can come in here and have combat be difficult and stealth be difficult, vice versa. Guaranteed assassination. Basically what this means is when you're doing an assassination, if you are capable of doing it, there might be some like tougher big enemies that you like maybe are over leveling you and you can't do it. But no matter how many health segments an enemy has, if you have the option for an assassination, you will get the kill if this is on. If it's off, what you're going to need to do is go through the skill tree and be able to like level up, and you can also use some of the perks on the gear. And as you progress farther along, you're going to be able to take more health segments off with your assassinations. Your base level enemies typically still go down in one hit, but when you get to higher, tougher, you know, samurai defending a castle, stuff like that, they'll have more segments. Those are the ones that are going to be harder. But if you just like, if I'm in position for an assassination and I put a blade in their neck, then guess what? I'm going to get the assassination. This is kind of a preference on how you want to play. Honestly, I don't know if there's a wrong answer here. Just play how you want to. But that is an option if you want that to feel that way. Guided exploration, as I previously mentioned, you will get like kind of hints and nudges where something's going to be a general area, as opposed to guided exploration on, you're going to literally see the quest marker, go here. And also what guided exploration will do, it will show like every side quest just pop up on the map. You don't have to walk near it, maybe trigger it. It is going to be a less like kind of organic experience, but if you want to check all the boxes and see everything, and this might be something you turn on later on if you want to, if you're like, all right, I've done a lot, but maybe I want to check all the boxes before I do the finale, then you can turn this on and go see what you might have missed. Area loot. This is what I do recommend turning on. Maybe you kill multiple enemies. Maybe you're in an area where there's multiple things to pick up. This just saves you time, so you may as well pick this one and turn it on, because so far I don't see a reason not to. QuickTime events. You've got standard QuickTime events where you need to press the right button at the right time. Simplified, and sometimes you might even need to hold it for certain things. You might need to hold, you might need to press different ways. Simplified is truly just a button press, makes it a little easier. Auto, it just goes through the motions of whatever's going to happen there, whether it's like kind of a meditation sequence or a sword practicing sequence. These are kind of like training sequences, and you're gaining knowledge points. I'll show you that later. Auto just lets it kind of run through. If you don't want to worry about the button presses, you don't have to. Right now, I've just been playing with it on default. So as you're playing through the game, the start of the game is kind of the introduction to both, and then your next about 10 hours are going to be spent with Nawe for a while as you're leveling up until you get to a certain sequence where you kind of join with Yasuke. No spoilers, but that's this kind of general sequence of events. You know eventually you get to play as him, so that shouldn't spoil anything. But once you're actually able to play as both, what you're going to realize is that Yasuke is kind of limited in certain things. He is powerful. He has more rations that he can go through. His gear is going to give him more health. He can typically do more damage with his gear at the same level as well. So he's a powerful warrior. But in Assassin's Creed, you're going to be doing things like parkour and running around. So his ability to climb is still going to be something that he can like climb up a structure like this. But I will tell you, there are plenty of really tall spots like the big temple over there that are likely going to be a viewpoint. And by that, I mean it's probably going to be one of those things that you can stand on top of, look around, and it's a sync point for Assassin's Creed like this big eagle is. It's likely one of those, and which way am I looking? Let's see. That direction on the map is looking... Yeah, so I'm looking at this right now. Unfortunately, typically when you're trying to climb up on these things, Yasuke is not going to be a great one to climb those because he doesn't have a grappling hook. Nawe does. She's going to be your shinobi, and that grappling hook lets her just go roof, 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 and go all the way straight up the outside. She can stand on the top, and you can just get in and get out, and you'll be able to be much more stealthy in just about every situation. So if you want the big warrior for a tough fight, that's going to be Yasuke, but I think a lot of the time people are going to play as Nawe for the stealthing, for the nimble nature, for the parkour, for climbing things. So that's kind of where you're going to get the distinction between the two, and for me, I'm probably just going to play as Nawe a lot of the time. Also, if you find like secret tombs that you can get into, it's like a crevice that you would squeeze through in other video games that you kind of like, it forces you to progress forward. You can go into those as Nawe. Literally, I tried to do that as Yasuke, and he's like, oh, Nawe would really love exploring this place. He's pretty much telling you to switch. So there are moments where the game is almost going to make you switch, because sometimes there are castle towers like this one that you honestly might be able to go all the way up on the interior if you fight your way up through every level as Yasuke, get to the roof, pop out kind of a roof ladder, and I've been to the roof of a couple as Yasuke. Mostly, though, it's a lot easier to go on the outside, fight what you need to, maybe go for just the chest if you want to, get in, get out as Nawe, and you're good to go. So you're not always going to be able to get to the top first off, because some are deteriorating, so you kind of have to do the parkour and climbing that Nawe does. Every so often, you might be able to get to the top as Yasuke, and if it's a big, tough one that's all combat, maybe you will. But more often than not, I think Yasuke is going to be left for bigger combat sequences, and Nawe is going to be your assassin character that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards. Now, when it comes to the skill trees, you're going to notice as you get a couple more weapons from your early katana that Nawe is going to have a couple other options. I do want to say don't sleep on the Kusarigama. I'm probably saying that wrong. I apologize. Just for example, obviously her katana is going to be a close-up sword, but if you have groups of enemies and you're kind of struggling, don't forget about this weapon as a backup option to maybe like go into your inventory and switch if you're having trouble in a certain area. Throw this thing on there instead of the Tanto maybe, because the Tanto can be used for double assassinations, which is cool, but if you're just trying to wipe out enemies, the range, the circular and spinning range that the Kakurega can do, it's really powerful. So have some fun with this one, and also don't forget about it, because for groups, this thing is stupidly powerful. Now, she's got her katana, she's got Tanto. Those are all different ways to play kind of your melee combat. When you get to tools, Shinobi, and Assassin, these are a bit more of your functionality. So this is going to be your tools, is your kunai, your distraction bells that you can upgrade to be shinier. You've got your shuriken, so if you want to take out lights, you can do that to make things dark. And I will say, like, darkness and nighttime is really going to give you a good advantage when you're trying to really focus on being stealthy, especially if you turn stealth up to expert. Nighttime could be huge if you're going to try and invade a whole castle. Nighttime really can make a big difference, so it's one of those things that taking out lights and stuff can also have that similar functionality, and all these tools can get really cool. But the kunai, now I have like 50% armor piercing, and then the next rank up would be increased damage by 10, and then kunai no longer break, so I can literally always go over and pick them back up. There's some really cool upgrades, but the only way to access these upgrades on any of these trees is to get a higher knowledge rank. So you'll see on the far left-hand side, right now my knowledge rank is 3. So that actually lets me get up to my Hidden Blade working on Assassin, currently removes health segments 3. I'm currently getting 3. It's either a perk from my armor, or maybe it's counting this one because I'm on the ground, but either way, I can get 3 health segments gone. So if an enemy has 3 health segments, I can do a quick assassination and they're dead. Up here, now, being as I have the perk for 3, this is probably the one giving me that 3 perk. And then if I'm grounded, this is an additional one. So if I'm on the ground, this is going to be 4. This would be 5. This would be 6. You can also get perks on your gear that are going to give you additional health segments through assassinations as well. And honestly, that's how you can take out like 6 health bar enemies with a quick assassination, because you have these perks. But if I don't have the knowledge to get up here to be able to use the Hidden Blade on large enemies, or even just get to double assassination on the second tier, I'm missing out on like a whole bunch of variety that makes the combat and the stealth and everything way more fun. So you want to make sure you get these knowledge ranks, the ones on the left-hand side, and you need knowledge points. The way you get those is by finding anything with a big yellow, or sorry, orange, kind of a dark orange icon. So this one is Kata. This is like Yasuke kind of doing his like sword training, almost like doing a karate routine. He goes through the motions in that one. Come down here, and we've got finding lost pages in a temple. It's really simple. All you do is once you're in, say, a temple area, hold left trigger, and you're going to kind of go into this focus mode where you can kind of go and tag enemies. But you'll also notice that if there's anything of importance, maybe it's a little white dot, you can tag it like, say, I did with this blue dot, and then as you're running around, that little blue dot is easy to spot. Now, that's like a origami butterfly for a quest, but the same thing. If I was looking for a lost page, you know, it's like if I can't see anything, I can move around, I can find that dot, and then I can run towards the page. That's pretty much the way you would find those. If you're going for these shrines, we just need to pray in a couple different locations. Same thing's going to apply. So pay respects at different shrines. So within the shrine zone itself, again, scope around, see where those locations are. It can look like you're standing in front of the side of a building, but as long as you're standing in the right spot, you'll get the little trigger that says pray, hit the button, do that a couple times. These are really quick, but these are how you get the knowledge points. And the more knowledge points you get, the higher level of skills that you're going to have access to. And then as you level up, you'll be able to spend your mastery points where you want to. Nice thing about the mastery points, you can reset them anytime. But anytime you see an orange icon, I really can't stress it enough, make sure you do it. Like, this is horse archery. It's just kind of a fun one to run through. If you knock it out, get a little experience, get a knowledge point, and then when you come back and you're like, all right, I want to do some cool stuff with my katana. Well, now if I'm up in like level 4, I can break guards straight away and then do like 9 slashes and just absolutely put a huge chunk of damage into somebody. Or Eviscerate now has its full effect on large enemies. There's different things that you're going to have access to the higher up you get. So anytime you see an orange icon, go knock it out, please, because the more fun stuff is the higher up you go in both characters and in the different options. So like Kakurega, it's like you get up here, you're going to see the snake bite ability that I can do. I can trip him from far away, do a decent amount of damage, and kind of take somebody out of the equation. I can knock him down for even longer. The Cyclone Blast hits enemies. Like, look at the range that it's showing in that little icon. That whole standing arena that she's on, it's pretty much covering the entire range, hitting them multiple times, and pushes back almost all the way to the end of it. This is something you're obviously not going to have at the beginning, but if you get enough knowledge points, combat's going to feel completely different by end game. So I just kind of want to stress how important that stuff is, getting those knowledge points, where to get them, and why the skill trees are really fun when you get to the top. So this is your hideout. It's going to kind of be your base of operations to come back to. You've got some buildings that will give you some benefits. And once you get through just a little bit of the opening story, you'll eventually have some place to come back here. Apparently Yasuke is just hanging out. And if you want to compare size, by the way, this is your height difference. This is why Yasuke is a beast in combat, just not going to be as nimble. He's got her by, I don't know, a foot, foot and a half or more. So there's a noticeable difference between the two. But here within the hideout, you've got different buildings, and I kind of want to take a minute to go through a few of them. So when you get started, you're going to have your main building here, and the first thing that you have to build is Kakurega 1, and I think there's literally one place to put it. So everybody's pretty much going to start out like this. Now, when you go to build, different buildings have certain benefits to them, and then some stuff like these are going to truly just be cosmetic. So my focus for or at least my advice for your focus, do the stuff of function first, and then do your fashion later on. So early on, you're going to have stables as one of your things that you actually have, and then your Kakurega is the first thing that you build once you get to the hideout, and it basically shows you how to pick up resources. It's like the first thing you do. Now, I have a lot of these at level 2, some at level 3, so let me give you a couple recommendations of what to get first and when. Now, as you're running around the world, you're picking up a lot of resources. So when you start out, you're going to have scouts as you talk to different people that you help in the world. As you get more upgrades to buildings, things like that, you're going to have more scouts that you can use. Early on, you might only have like 1, maybe 2. And if you only have 1 to start off, stockpiles that you'll find in different castles and places where resources are initially take 2 scouts just to actually salvage. So one of the early ones I do recommend going for is your stable upgrade to 2, because it's going to allow you to use your scouts much more efficiently, especially if you're playing with guided exploration off. You're going to be able to use your scouts both to help you on the quest and also help you get resources. And if you get like 3 or 4 scouts cooking, all bringing back resources, then getting your resources back in your hideout and then leveling them up, you're going to be just more efficient long term. So getting up to level 3 just gets you 20% more resources. It's not a bad thing to get more as you go, and I would probably do this once you're kind of comfortable, but it's not like a priority. But level 2, getting that down to 1 scout is a major efficiency boost, so that's a pretty high priority. My other priority that I would recommend, and it's kind of one of the other buildings it does make you build pretty early on, is your forge. And the reason I would say getting your forge from level 1 early so you can upgrade your weapons to level 20, that's not a bad thing. It's going to kind of make you do that at a certain point in the story progression, is to build a forge and then you interact. But you can find a level 7 legendary weapon that has a cool perk on it, or a piece of armor that's legendary, and those are going to be the most fun ones because they have the coolest perks. And you can level that up and bring with you as you go. Just the basic forge lets you take it to 20. What I would recommend is really trying to get up to 2. 3 is not going to be totally required. I just wanted to knock out the forge on this playthrough for fun. But the forge at level 40 lets you start putting engravings that are non-legendary, so at least you get the engraving option, and it lets you take things up to level 40. It's going to take a while to get up to level 40, especially, again, taking things up to level 60, that's the max probably. It's not really necessary to do this that early, but level 40 gives you a lot of leeway. If you can get your forge up to 2, you can put engravings on there so you get some extra benefits. Lets you use the engraving system as early as you can get this, and also you don't have to worry about capping out until 40, because that is going to be quite a while. So getting the forge to 2 is probably second to getting the stables to 2. Now, the Kakurega up to level 2, early on, this is just going to acquire a scout, so you can do the scout functionality, and you're also going to be granted fast travel. I'll show you what the Kakurega locations look like out in the cities and towns. You're also going to have access to seasonal contracts and supplies. That's why you kind of get this by default when you're kind of getting started in the game. Level 2 offers seasonal provincial rumors, which you can get legendary chests from, which are really cool, and you can also help them clear regional alerts and do different things. At level 3, you can unlock the Kakurega locations for cheaper. Once you get high enough, the money cost isn't as big of a deal, so I would not put this as a priority, but level 2 for this one, it's not kind of nice to have, but not as early. I would do this one after the stables and after the forge, but it's nice to have the option for the rumors, which are legendary chests and stuff like that. Then when we come to the study, you're going to basically just be getting scouts as you go. So you get additional scouts, and then the search radius, like the scout might give you a radius to look in on the map. This will help reduce that, so this is a nice thing to build. Level 2 is another scout, level 3 is another scout, and then also reduces the search radius for like the quest hint location to a much smaller radius at level 3. So again, if you don't mind a little searching early on, level 3 is probably not something you're going to have access to for a while anyway, but the more scouts you get, the more function you can do, the more resources you can get. So I would just do this one as it kind of comes naturally to you, not as high of a priority outside of getting one of them set up. And then the dojo is for allies. I don't have that one yet, but that's going to let them train up to an initiate rank. So there's different allies you'll have depending on how the story plays out. And you'll be able to have those with you for certain assistance. The other one I would recommend is Tera. I would get this one as early as it makes sense. Like if you can get stables made and forge made, and maybe stables up to like level 2, I would probably build this as quick as you can, because an extra 10% experience all the way through the game, it's just going to exponentially build all the way through as you go. Everything you do is 10% more, so that you will progress literally 10% faster the whole way through. So it's not a bad thing. When it comes to getting your rations to be more efficient, aka 20% more healing and 20% more healing, not a bad thing. And if you're playing on, say, expert difficulty, that might be really important to keep your healing to be more valuable, but I would not put this as a priority. And you've also got to do certain things to be able to get there. As for praying granting you a boon for 15 minutes, if you eventually get the resources for this thing, that's fine. I'll try and find a clip of where I see one in the world, but overall, you pass these things, sometimes you might stop at them, you might just drive right by them on your horse, and honestly, this should be a really low priority for an upgrade because it's not going to last that often, and you may not even see one for a little while. And then finally here, the Nando, this is going to replenish your Kakurega costs, replenishing your scouts, makes it 30% cheaper. So if I send scouts to go do things, but I'm still in that season that's currently happening, and I want them to do more things, I can pay to reset them. This just makes that a little cheaper. Not a bad thing to go for, depending on how frequently you're using scouts. If it doesn't seem like a priority, it's probably not that big of a deal. But that's the main buildings. After that, you get to cosmetics, and that's really up to you when you want to spend your resources, but I'm not going to spend anything on a cosmetic until everything functionally is built. That's just kind of the way I play personally. But yeah, stables, getting your stockpiles down to 1, really important. And then also forge up to level 2, study for additional scouts, kind of work your way through. But don't forget about your experience down here. This one's probably a really early one as soon as it makes sense. All right, so the next thing I do want to mention how important they are is the Kakuregas. And if I'm saying that wrong, I apologize because I've already said it multiple times in the video. But what you'll notice here is you've got the option to fast travel. And sometimes you'll just be riding your horse through an area. And if you get relatively close to one, you're going to kind of ping it on your map. And if you take this one, for example, you'll notice I can just unlock it for 800 mon. And you might do that in a couple places. And if you see one that you can unlock, honestly, I highly recommend doing it because 1, it's a fast travel point, but 2, it's a fast travel point at ground level. If you ever need to do anything as Yasuke, it's a lot easier to start at ground level as opposed to starting way up high on one of like the viewpoint kind of mountain things, and then have to climb your way down and maybe work your way out of a castle. These are actually really beneficial to have, but they have a lot of other uses too. So if we go inside, we'll look at them. So, a couple things here. 1, you're going to have storage that you can access. So if you have something like, for example, I got a really high level sword, but I'm not going to use it for a while, I should probably put that in storage. As much as I'd love to use it, it won't let me right now. So we'll put that in storage, and we'll get back to that one later. So that's just a way, if you want to clean up your inventory, you can. You've got allies that you can manage. So this is kind of your ally board. Same thing we talked about with the dojo. This is one character that I've met, and you can actually have them, you know, hang out in the dojo, work on different abilities so they're more helpful in fights. And if they help you along with certain things, you can actually have them do different things with you. So there's more to the ally system. I haven't fully dove into it yet, but you can actually interact with them here. Contracts are a huge, huge thing. So every season they get refreshed, and you'll notice you have resources and money that you're going to be able to get from these, along with experience. And they're really simple, honestly. So assassinate a target, destroy a target. Sometimes it's just destroy a box of resources, which I literally just had to run over. Some of the stuff is really easy, and eliminate the targets, you'll get some money. So all you would do is you would pick up those, and then so if I'm in the region of Omi, all I got to do is look for these swords. So this one here is going to be resources. All the resources that you see right there, those are all for upgrading your material, your gear, and you do all the gear upgrades at the forge. But if you just want to level up your gear to keep it current, those are the resources you're going to be using. This is just a weaken the military presence. If it's out in the woods, it's typically just a small camp, and it takes, you know, a few minutes to take out with some stealth, or just like wail away in combat and you're good to go. Come up here. Same thing, assassinate a single target, like take one out, not really overly difficult, and you'll get some resources for building as well. Pretty simple, easy experience and everything else that you're going to get from it. Definitely worth doing, and then every season they refresh. So if you're just running around in a region, you do some contracts and then the season changes, maybe you might need to pick some up again. But if you clear out contracts in a region and then the season changes, guess what? You can probably go find more. When you get up to level 2, you're going to find it for your Kakurega when you've got it upgraded like I do. You'll see these rumors of legendary chests. So I can actually see that there's a legendary chest in the area. I can basically activate them, and then I can track the ones I'm going for. Legendary chests, giving you some unique gear with unique perks on it. Definitely going to help you make some builds. So getting your Kakurega up to level 2 is going to give you those opportunities, which is nice. You're also able to just swing by and refill your resources. So if I need any tools, I can. And you're also going to notice I have scout refill that I can do. So if I have more resources that I want to go after, I've got 2 of my scouts that I've used for tracking a quest or whatever it may be in an area. And if I want to reset those to use them again in that season, they reset seasonally. But if you're busy in that season, come in here, refill them, and for a pretty cheap cost. That's why I also don't think spending the resources at the hideout to be able to make it cheaper to refill these things is not that big of a deal, because early on you may be limited, but as you progress a little bit farther, play for a little while, eventually money's less of an issue. But again, it's one of those late buildings I would make. I just wouldn't make it a priority. And I think that's everything in here, but it's just a nice way to just come out on the ground level, because if I come out here on the ground level and then I just kind of get to running around, you'll notice it's like I can get to the ground level pretty quickly. I can see wherever the viewpoint is somewhere. There's probably a viewpoint up high. But if you come out of a viewpoint from one of these things and you're in the middle of, say, Katano Castle, for example, yeah, there might be something I need to do in there, even though I already got the legendary chest. But then I have to get out of the tower, possibly dive into the water to get out, then climb out of the water, then get to the road. It's just so much quicker. Like this one right here, just hit here and hit the road and go. That's just the difference. So it may cost you a little bit early on, but I will tell you by the time you have them, and if you don't get them all early on, guess what? I can come back and unlock one later, and then I can use that one and get around a little bit quicker. So at some point, if you run by one, it may not be like an early priority to unlock every single one. Like if I'm running around Kyoto early on, I may not need to unlock both sides. Like there's 3 of them here, but if I, get one of them here, and then maybe one of them here, this one might wait. But later on, it's just nice to have everyone feasibly possible, and they all have some nice functionality the farther your hideout gets upgraded. So when you're traveling around the world, one thing I do recommend is sticking to the roads. Now, if I turn Pathfinder on, say I want to head up here to this location, for example. Maybe there's something up here, or I want to go over to this target. What you'll notice is if I turn the Pathfinder on, I'm going to draw a path on the ground, and it's going to give me a guide of where I need to go. It's kind of nice. Now, the thing about that guide, it may not be the most direct route. As you can see, it's going to have me go way over here, but it's just going to take me on the main road. So it's going to travel on the main roads. It might go through some cities. And a thing to know is like this on the outside isn't bad. If for some reason actually went through Kyoto, when you're on a horse inside of a major city, you'll notice you like slow down. It's like if you've ever watched a Formula 1 or any racing, when you go into the pits, you have to drive slowly. There's like a speed cap in there. Same thing seems to happen to your horse, and then as soon as you're outside of town, you can go to full gallop speed. Kind of a weird thing, I guess I get it. But the other thing is you can't have the horse automatically follow the path. Would be nice if it would, but you can't. But honestly, more often than not, I would probably tell you to follow the roads, because the way the forests are set up, they are so dense and so thick. Trying to go like off-road, you might call it, with your horse. Like I can travel pretty quickly, but as soon as I get in here, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. Because I'm going to run into things. It doesn't work well. If you want to cover like the last couple 100 meters on foot, you can do that. But what you're going to notice is, like, for some reason, if I get off my horse and my objective is maybe 200 or 300 meters this direction, that might be one where I just would say, screw it. Instead of going all the way around, I might get off my horse and just run straight through, and I'd probably do okay. But I would not try and go through a major length of any time period on your horse through the woods. But you'll also notice, potentially, maybe I do want to stop at Ogura Pond. I want to hit this, I want to hit this contract on the way through, and then maybe I can pick up the path over here. That might be one where you might, travel through, see what you see, kind of wander your way through a bit through the woods, and then get back on track. Again, a lot of this game is how you want to play it, but you might actually check and see if you're going pretty far away where you're going, and if there's some stuff to check off on the way, maybe you got a couple detours on the way. But while I'm doing this, I spotted one thing that I did want to point out to you. As you're traveling on kind of the main roads, you're going to find Ronin, and they just want to take you out. That's all they want to do. Now, the nice thing about Ronin is if you see one, I recommend fighting them more often than not because they're going to be worth it. They're going to give you money, and those blue attacks are the ones that you can block that are going to be the flurry attacks. The red are unblockable, so these fights can be a little tougher, especially if you're fighting at level. Now, if you see a Ronin that's level 40, I would honestly recommend skipping it. But generally, if you can engage in the fights and deal with them, you're going to either get money, you're going to get gear that's at your level. They're actually really worth engaging with. And they're just on the main roads, and if you're traveling through and you're like, I could use some gear, or I'm lacking, let me go for a little bit of a Ronin fight, you know, polish up my combat chops. They can definitely give you a little work, so don't sleep on their combat abilities. They're not one to completely sleep on. And then when they go down, nice thing is you're going to be able to loot them. You might get a pouch of valuable, you might get some money, you might get a piece of gear at your level. So Ronin, I actually really do recommend when you see one, not all the time, but if you just like randomly spot one, hop off, fight them every so often because they're going to help keep your gear a little more relevant. They're going to give you some money, and they're going to keep your like money that you need to spend on things kind of continually going up because you're going to do some pretty long travels. For example, when I went from Kyoto here in the middle, I had some quest that took me all the way over here to Azuchi. That was like a 5,000 meter run. Stop on the way and do a few things, and you're probably bound to have a better time because you break up the really long journey. And then notice I also unlocked a couple Kakuregas as I went. You might stop at a viewpoint that you can get to. But yeah, if you got some long journeys, you're bound to probably see some Ronin, but they're definitely worth fighting every so often. You don't have to fight every one of them. That would get a little old, but every so often, definitely worth doing. As you travel along a road, you're occasionally going to see little things that might pop up a little icon. The Jizo statues, like these are, sometimes they're at forks in the road, you'll kind of notice them. If you come up here, it's going to allow you to make an offering. And it's honestly just a really quick way. You make an offering, take a second, and you get a little experience from it. Doesn't take but like a few seconds. But if you do enough of those, you're probably bound to add up and get yourself a little extra experience as you go. So if you see a Jizo statue and you haven't actually tagged it, meaning it's actually showing up on your map. So if I come up here, for example, I've got one. If I ran by it, well, if you go back by it, you can do the offering, cross it off your map of things to do, and get the experience from it. So every so often you're going to find different locations that have different amounts of wealth. And you'll notice, say, like the Azuchi Castle, wealth is low. It's a big area. It doesn't mean there are no resources in there. There's usually actually quite a bit. But when it comes to specific resources, say, like for building materials or other things, it may not have as much. But again, also doing things like castles is really good to actually go for the beating the samurai Daisho and then getting the loot and experience from those. So sometimes the castles have different objectives, but there are certain locations, they sometimes will be marked by a little red marker on your map. They typically are. And if you clean them out, what you're going to notice is they've got a wealth high. And this is where you're going to want to be able to go for a lot of those salvageable resources that you can send back with scouts. So this little shipyard that I've got here, if I'm able to get in here and tag the resources, I'm able to actually get quite a bit out of this. So this is where if you get into combat, you can use the eagle vision mode, you can tag the enemies that are out there, but you also notice if I tag these little gold icons, anything that's like a resource or anything of this nature, I can just basically make them kind of permanent pings. I can see everything that's out there, and that should be just about all of it. So now when I come back out of the eagle vision mode, I can actually see everything, even a little bit farther. And I can see pretty much everything that's in here. So there's a lot of resources in here, a lot of things to pick up. So I'm going to go through and clear out the enemies. You guys will see plenty of combat when you play, but I just kind of want to show you the salvaging resources and stuff that I'm talking about in these areas of high wealth. Alright, so now that I've cleared this area out, what you're going to notice is I've got a lot of gold icons around me. Some are a little bit out there, so I probably have a couple more enemies, but honestly, you're just going to have a lot of resources that you can get. Now, I didn't quite, but notice I'm actually getting some good gear. I think this guy caught a dude that's dead, so I can kind of take him out. He's down because he spotted that one over there. Last one over here. Quick kunai, and this whole area is just cleaned up. So one of the enemies that I killed actually had a key on them. Typically, it's one of the areas with a lot of wealth to it. And in these areas, you're going to have loot boxes that you're going to get resources from. You're going to get some gear, but these are the resources that I'm talking about. And if I only have to spend one of my scouts to smuggle these resources, so much more efficient, because since I have 5 scouts right now, I'm going to run over here. There's also another storage location that I can open. And again, same key actually opened both locations, so this is a really high valuable one. And this is where I've got this resource that I can smuggle. This is another one. And all of this is just going to help me be able to get my hideout built up even faster. Some of them are just sitting out here so you can collect crops or whatever it may be. And a lot of this stuff out here in yellow is actually going to be like that. So some of this stuff is just going to be sitting around. But marking with those little yellow icons is actually really going to help you out, because then you'll be able to probably tag most things, make sure you don't miss a random chest in a corner. It's good to actually get these tags going, because they just really help keep everything square, because there can be a lot of little chests in an area, and if you miss one or two, you actually might miss some valuable resources, a nice little pickup, a valuable that could be sold for later, and if you just walk by it, it's not really needed. So run around and pick these up, and also if you do a little bit of this type of stuff, you might see that that was the most dramatic jump into shallow water I've ever seen. But all of these are and that's the engraving I was talking about. That's why it's not a legendary engraving, but all those little engravings don't cost much. They're like 80 or 90 mon to put on a weapon. And if you have a weapon you like, you just get to make it better. And engravings can go on the rare or legendary stuff. Apparently also you can use the little gold icon to find out what's in the water. Because if we jump out into the water and then dive, you'll find stuff that you would have never seen otherwise. So using that little searching resource can be a good thing to do. And then if you can actually loot an underwater chest, pay attention to your breath. But that's just going to be a nice thing you easily could have missed otherwise. So don't forget, hold that left trigger, search in areas, especially in high wealth, and make sure you pick up everything you can. And when it comes to clearing them out, if you want to know what's worth your time, typically high wealth stuff is going to be worth it, but then also like the low wealth, but the stuff with the Samurai Daisho, the gear you're going to get from there, also really, really helpful, because it's typically going to be good gear, good money, and possibly some more resources too. But that's just kind of an example of clearing out a camp, using the hold left trigger, look for all the valuable things, tagging everything, and then knowing where you need to run around. And it looks like I kind of forgot one. So I've got rations that I can refill in here, and I've got one more outside. So it's just a good way to kind of check around, see if you've missed anything, because I almost missed this one for a prime example. Just a nice way to check the area and be sure you've got everything. So one other thing that I don't have footage of, but I do kind of want to point out, you'll be traveling along these roads, and every so often you might find a couple enemies and then like one person kneel down, or kind of sounds of somebody in peril, whatever it may be. If you stop and like take out those two enemies, that civilian type person is going to be like, oh, how can I repay you? And usually just get to pick, do you want to work on world rumors, which can be things like chests or other, or you can have them scout intel. And I think that can either help you get like an intel pot back or give you an extra scout for a little while. Whatever it may be, if you see a random like person or hear somebody in peril kind of scream out as you're riding along, it actually typically is worthwhile to stop and say, yeah, I'll help. And then they'll usually do you a favor. Pretty simple and easy. I don't have footage of it, but if you hear somebody like that, I think you're probably bound to bump into that early on at some point. I did a couple times, I know. So just stop, do those people a favor. It's nice, and you'll usually get scouting benefit or something from it. So no reason really not to. So this is kind of the final thing that I want to show you guys. This is the castle situation. So typically castles are going to have a very tall tower, and you're also going to have the option to kill the Samurai Daisho to be able to get the loot, the experience, and also you can see 3 mastery points. That's 3 skill points that you can use. So the castles are really, really worth doing. But this is also where Nawe and her stealth actually works really well. So fast travel is currently unavailable because I can't get to the top of it, but I've like kind of creeped my way partway in the castle, but now I can truly just use my grappling hook, and I can go and skip almost the entire fight up on the inside. If you were Yasuke, you could probably work your way up inside of one of these, because there's potentially enough, and if there's a roof access, then you'll really know, but this one actually I'm not sure if that one's going to happen. So you'll know if there's like a door in the roof. And again, there's not a door in the roof, so Yasuke could not get to the top of this one without some help. But this is kind of the final thing I wanted to show. These are the synchronization points. Now granted, it's raining, so I may wait till the rain stops to actually show this. But these are the sync points. These are how you look around, and basically what's going to happen is, once I kind of climb up here on top, it's going to do the big circle. It might actually let the visibility happen even though it's raining. So you can just see everything around you. I'm kind of near a peninsula. But once you're here, it does the big cinematic circle, which is actually a pretty cool view. You'll hear the eagle sound, because kind of what some of these could be. You also notice if you were going to dive off, you would just dive straight into the big lake or ocean over wherever we are. But from here, you're also able to go into your observation mode, and then you're able to kind of tag anything that you can see. And some of the stuff can be really, really far away, depending on the angle that you're looking. And you can tag this stuff as something that you might want to see later. That's just something I've marked on the map. But whether I've been there, and maybe I took out the sake brewery, or there's undiscovered locations that I can tag, I now know by like kind of circling around and tagging these things, they are somewhere going to be on the map, and otherwise I might not have seen them. But now if I kind of check, I can look in the circle around me, and I can see that those up here in like the Mount Hay area, these are some that I tagged. Pretty big circle that you're going to be able to tag as new locations to go for. Possible new fast travel points, and it's just a nice way to know what's coming. So say I need to do a quest in On-You Pass, and if I'm close enough to here that I can potentially go get a viewpoint, I'm going to go and get the viewpoint, because having fast travel when you have a map this big is huge, and you don't always have the Kakurega that you're going to be able to visit depending on where you're going. So if you can get some of these viewpoints, they also work as a fast travel location, and you're able to get back there noticeably quicker. So if it's some weird out-of-the-way place for sure, and I see a viewpoint, I'm always going to find my way to climb to the top, and not always the fastest to do that. Sometimes, but not always, you'll have these things down here, like you can see, where she would jump off, and then this would allow me to do like the full dive into the water. And also, one other thing I do want to point out, do you see the little gold thing right down there? I may as well just jump off and show you, because apparently she's got some jumping skills. These little things right here. So it would show up as kind of an icon, but these are the Kujikiri. So for Nawe, these are how you're going to get the flashbacks into her history, kind of experience a little bit more of what she's been through before you kind of started taking over her character. And they're cool experiences to understand more about her character and the relationships that she's went through. But you also, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, you can control boats. So sometimes it could be a small river crossing, but something massive like this, you can actually take over a boat and potentially come in a back entrance, avoid a whole bunch of security, and it actually can save you quite a bit of time. So I can run up here in this backside, and as long as I can fight him, potentially, well, he's probably gone. And yeah, you can come in the castle the back way and have a completely different experience. So I will tell you, the more you explore, the more you find different ways in. You might find a rope crossing, a tree that you can climb up in. Did this dude swim out? He's swimming out. That's so funny. Don't worry. We're here waiting for you. Kind of a good way to finish up the video. Just something a little ridiculous. Proper finish. See you, bud. Quite bloody, though. So that is a lot of the tips I can show you guys for Assassin's Creed Shadows without going into too many spoiler things, and hopefully you learned something from this video. If you did, drop a like below, leave a comment if there's anything I missed, because I know there's a lot that I didn't put in here, but this is a general overview without going into too many spoiler details or certain quests or anything like that. Have fun, explore. If you want to, like, not worry too much about the scouts, there's systems for that. And overall, hopefully, if you're playing this thing, you're having a good time, because I'm having a good time as I worked my way through. Seems like the rain is actually washing off the blood, which is kind of cool. So, enjoy. Have a good one. If you're enjoying my content, find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, wherever it's Ebontis. Subscribe, like, follow, and I'll see you in the next one.